Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to have the opportunity to contribute to the report that was published today. As we were discussing a little bit earlier, I think what's fascinating is that data can often be seen as a tremendous intangible, but when we think about it in the context of trade, it becomes so much more tangible and real for all of us. So through the IRIS-G Data Committee, we were absolutely delighted to produce two reports. The first one on localization, which was a theme that came through very, very strongly today. And it's about the increase in localization measures that are taking place across the world. That coupled with an approach which is often termed as data sovereignty. So it's about holding data close, it's about not letting data transfer, and it's about creating barriers to the growth of the digital economy, which, as I mentioned earlier today, isn't something of the future, but it's something within which we are actually living today. And what's fascinating, of course, is that the financial services sector as a whole is probably one of the most digitized business areas of all sectors. And as a result, the free flow of data is so important. So when we talk about the digital economy, when we talk about data, I think we also need to understand that it is by default global and it is currently flowing. What we're dealing with are the policy, the legal, and the regulatory challenges which are increasingly restricting that flow of data. In our first report on data localization, we identified what are some of the drivers for localization, and many of them are very legitimate concerns, concern to ensure regulatory access to data, a concern to ensure data security, to ensure data protection, but then we actually explored, is localization the right answer? And in our report we found that actually the measures taken to localize often have the opposite effect of what the concerns and the measures were intended to achieve. So localization doesn't necessarily promote jobs locally or skills locally. Localization doesn't necessarily mean that regulators are going to have better access to data, and it doesn't necessarily mean that data is going to be better protected. And so we made a number of recommendations in that report about how that can be addressed. Our second report was on the dynamics of international data transfers. Where are we now? Where are we going in terms of the current trend of regulation and laws, and what would we recommend are the policy approaches going forward? And it was terrific actually today to hear from both government and regulators that they're very supportive of some of those recommendations which we made in that report. The first one being data adequacy measures are important tools. They do take an awfully long time to agree, but if we have momentum and if we have those bilateral opportunities to achieve adequacy, then that is a fantastic way to give certainty to businesses and to individuals, and to ensure high data protection standards and to safeguard data flows. The second one was around certifications and other policy approaches like cross-border privacy rules, binding corporate rules, and so on. Mechanisms which perhaps industry can take the lead on. It doesn't necessarily require a legal footing, and then regulators can support. And that can cross geographical boundaries and achieve consistency at the same time, which is absolutely super. And then the final one is the one that we all want, which is a multilateral approach, to come up with a multilateral solution where we can find and acknowledge the similarities in approaches to build certainty, trust, and consistency in the approach to data flows and data transfers, which will help support the growth of our digital economy, an economy which we live in today. It isn't about the future. In part it is because of the digital assets, the metaverse, and the innovation that's taking place, but it is a reality today. And as we said earlier, the financial services sector is effectively digitized already. And so what we need to do is to support certainty and free flow of data with trust.